Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Emma, and I'm on the design team for TEDx FoggyBottom, if not now. And I'm really excited to introduce one of our exhibit partners that we've worked with to bring this session together, Unchained Stories. Very relevant for current times and our theme, if not now. And we're really excited for this partnership and bringing more awareness to them as a community. So I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, who's the founder and creative director, and she can tell you a bit more about their organization and what we're doing today.
Thanks so much, Emma. We're really happy to be here with TEDx FoggyBottom. And I see lots of friends and new friends and old friends in the group today. So I'm Kristen. I'm coming to you all from Washington, D.C. Here in D.C., we live on unceded ancestral Piscataway land. And I am going to tell you a little bit about Unchained Stories and a little bit about me and how Unchained Stories came to be. And then we've got a couple of really amazing folks that are going to share their stories, and we're going to show a couple of videos, and just have a conversation. So really want you all to think about questions so you can join the discussion. Feel free to engage in the chat while we're talking, and then we'll turn it over for questions a little bit later. So a little bit about, well, let me set the stage first. Last night, there were 2.3 million people in prisons and jails in the United States. Earl, who's going to be joining us later, is actually waiting for one of those people to be released today outside of a facility in Maryland, which I hope will tell us about. There are about 4.5 million more people who are on probation and parole around the country, and somewhere close to 20 million people who have been previously convicted of a felony, who have been incarcerated. And many of those people have been either barred or discouraged in various ways from participating in the political process. So because of what we do at Unchained Stories and this moment in time, as we are all looking to a really critical election, I think we can all pretty much agree that this is a really critical election, we thought we would talk about incarceration and voting. So I just want to share a little bit about my story, how I got here, and what Unchained Stories is all about. So I'm a creative, and I took a winding path to get where I am. I was a kid with a passion for politics and also photography. And I ended up going to law school and worked on a national political campaign on Capitol Hill for a period of time, and then in advocacy roles with nonprofits. And I had all this idealism as a young person. I know we have a lot of college students on here with us today. So I had all this idealism that comes with wanting to change the world. And what I found that it just wasn't working. I was talking about policy issues in the abstract without being connected with communities and people and where the impact of those issues really was. So in 2011, I left a job with a nonprofit organization to get back to my roots as a creative and an activist. And that same year, I walked into a jail for the first time. I've never been incarcerated, but over the last decade, I have gotten what I might say is uncomfortably familiar with being in prisons and jails. I regularly answer phone calls from folks in my network, in my community, that start something like, "This is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at a correctional facility." I'm pretty familiar with those calls. And I only understand what I do about the experience of incarceration because of the people who have had that experience themselves and have trusted me to share their story with me and to be in community with the work that I'm doing. And I'm so grateful for that. My guiding principle comes from the activist Angela Davis, who has said, "Our most difficult and urgent challenge is that of creatively exploring new terrains of justice where the prison no longer serves as our major anchor." I feel like I can only imagine a world without prisons because of some of the visionary people that I have met who have lived years, in some cases decades, behind bars, and yet are still capable of seeing that world that Angela Davis is calling us to create. And I'm so happy to have some of those folks on this in this conversation with us today. So what is Unchained Stories, and why is Unchained Stories? Mass incarceration on principle, thrives on invisibility and silence. Folks are locked away behind a wall where we can't see them or hear them. That's the way it is set up to be, in essence. And most of the stories that we do see about that experience are over-dramatized or far too narrow. They are all negatives, gangs and stabbings and Law and Order style drama, or they're these feel-good second chance narratives, which really use this model of there are bad people and there are good people, and we good people need to sort of give this redemptive do-over to these bad people, and that's not really how it is, right? All of these stories, all of our stories are so complex, and these approaches that are, traditional sort of journalism and documentary approaches that reduce folks who have been incarcerated to a crime they were convicted of or a number of years that they served, essentially make people into walking statistics. And that process can also be incredibly exploitative and also trauma-inducing. And so the vision that I had and that came in collaboration with folks who were incarcerated and had been was that it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are building a social impact production company. We're making independent films and creating advocacy-driven content, while also training and empowering incarcerated and formerly incarcerated folks to use the tools of multimedia and storytelling and to take ownership of their own narratives. We have created a multimedia storytelling course in a pilot project inside of the DC Department of Corrections here. And one of the speakers that we have today was part of that, and I'm hoping he'll share a little bit about that. And we're also piloting filmmaking workshops for returning citizens, for formerly incarcerated folks, to tell their stories of their own lives and their communities up in Baltimore with the Maryland Justice Project. And we have our team from Baltimore on today, and I'm super excited to hear from them. And we at Unchained Stories are committed to building pathways for impacted creatives to gain skills and get jobs, which also helps to bring more of these critical stories and voices into the conversation about mass incarceration. That, I believe, is the way that we can dismantle the system as we know it, and also be able to get creative and envision and build alternatives to keep our communities safe and allow everyone to thrive that doesn't look like prisons and policing as we know them. So I am going to show you all a really short 1-minute video with just a little introduction to our work at Unchained Stories. And then we will get on to our conversation about voting. So 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. Still learning all these processes, but here we go. All right. We believe that a world without prisons and policing as we know them is possible, and we can build this world with stories. Unchained Stories is a social impact production company and media consulting firm that is dismantling mass incarceration and building a more just world through the power of storytelling.
Those closest to the problem is closest to the solution.
In a world driven by digital media, visual storytelling tools are the most powerful weapons we can wield in the fight for justice. Join our movement. All right, so that's a little intro to Unchained Stories. You can find us, and we'll drop the info in the chat. You can find us on social media and on the web. And I just want to introduce this specific conversation. I believe that listening to one another's stories is really critical in engaging and having an impact in the political process and the policies that are creating and that can undo the system of mass incarceration. So today we're talking about voting. And personally, I've been so passionate about voting and civic engagement because the first time I voted in a national election was in 2000. I just dated myself, sorry y'all. Was in 2000 when it felt like the election was decided by something other than a majority of people's votes. And that was certainly not the first time that happened, and it definitely wasn't the last time that happened. But I wasn't okay with that, and I decided I wanted to get involved. And that's sort of the beginning of this journey that I'm on, and taking us to the present. This year, here in Washington, D.C., where some of us are, not all of us for sure, in July of 2020, the DC City Council passed a groundbreaking law that granted voting rights back to every citizen of the District of Columbia who has been convicted of a felony, including those who are currently incarcerated. There are 2 states other than DC who allow incarcerated folks to vote. And what that means here is that thousands and thousands of people at the DC jail and also in Federal Bureau of Prisons facilities across the country where many DC residents are housed are voting, have received paper ballots and are casting those ballots in this election in November. In some cases, they already have. And there's also some incredible advocacy work going on around voting rights in Maryland, which I think our Baltimore crew is going to tell us about. But first, I'm going to share, and I'm going to hand the mic, virtual mic, over to Jonas, who is here with us. Jonas Gillum is a poet and author and the creator of the Healthy Masculinity Group in the Young Men Emerging Unit at the DC Department of Corrections. He's a returning citizen who participated in and helped create programs on the inside over the course of his 17 and a half years of incarceration. He plans to continue publishing his writings and mentoring now that he is home in the community. Jonas published his first book called Mastering the Pain just this year in 2020. And I want to say also, it's not in the bio that I'm reading, but I think Jonas will tell us about it, but he was just released after 17 and a half years in September of this year. And you saw in the video, you saw Jonas inside at the DC Department of Corrections, and he's going to share a little bit about his journey and also some of his work, which is in this book. So Jonas.
Okay, there we go. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonas Gillum, as she just introduced. And I mean, first about voting, you know, my perspective on voting has transformed over time, because when I was younger, growing up, I never thought about voting. I never knew anyone who voted or participated in, you know, that form of civic engagement. And it just was a non-factor to me. And I didn't really care about it, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people who come from where I've come from feel the same way, felt the same way, and some still feel that way. But over time and educating myself more about the little bit that I do know about politics and just about the world in general, I began to understand the importance of it. One of my most notable memories is just late last year, taking Georgetown classes in DC jail. I did a comparative politics course, and that class taught me a lot about how politics works and how you find politics in everything. Like, to a large degree, politics is life. You know what I mean? It's about having a voice and using your personal power to make a difference. And so from that perspective, politics is everything. We always engaging in it. But, you know, to the point of this election, I think we all can agree that it's like more important. It's probably the most important election of my lifetime. So I feel like it's extremely important right now to, you know, engage and vote and be educated on who we have running this country, so we can make more or better conscious decisions about, you know, how we're gonna move forward. And I think everyone, including myself, wants to move forward and not go backwards. Like, anytime I hear the term make America great again, I'll be like, what part of history are we talking about? You know what I mean, with that particular phrase. It always strikes me as odd, but we know what we're dealing with, and we know what we got to do moving forward. And I have a poem that I want to share that I think speaks to, you know, the time right now and the political climate. And so here I go. It's called The Awakening. For centuries now, this country has shown us nothing but hatred and disdain. We've endured the most heinous case of slavery the world has ever known, inflicted all in Jesus' name. Robbed, raped, and ravaged, conquered by a complete savage. No spiritual essence or spiritual connection. Murder and mayhem was their game. 400 years and counting, with no recourse in sight. But our soul knows no defeat. All we know is the fight. And now consciousness is rising. I've been saying it for years. We're going to make it all worth it. All the blood, sweat, and all the tears. Make them reveal all of what they know. Make them pay all of what they owe. Black lives more than matter. We've been the fuel behind the money flow. Financial prosperity we never benefited from. In exchange for our forced labor, we got crack cocaine in the inner city slum, a gang subculture and a whole lot of guns. Destruction was sure and true. Combine all of that with a poor education system, what else could we really do? But now we're in the age of intelligence, vital information that is relevant to the rebuilding of our community. No more I, because it's you and me. Ubuntu sounds like a meaningful start. It's time to wait and come out of the dark. An ancient future will manifest. It's in sight. We must stay the course and follow the light. So that's something I wrote earlier this year. And I think it's very specific to Black people, but I think it speaks to the climate of, where we are now. And that's a message that I really want to, send to everybody. We got to stay the course. And for those who aren't familiar with the South African word or proverb Ubuntu, it just refers to the connectivity of human nature, of human beings. You know what I mean? I am because you are. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's the message that we need right now, and especially during COVID as well. And I just, really appreciate the fact that my vote has been restored, even though it was taken from me before I even had it. But I appreciate the fact, and I won't take it for granted. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jonas. Really, really appreciate that. And I love that, the concept of Ubuntu and you sharing that, because I think that this work is about us listening to each other's perspectives and stories. So this is unexpected, but I'm a documentary filmmaker and trained in the unexpected. So we have Earl, who is here with us, and he is outside, as I mentioned before, but he's outside the Jessup Correctional Institution, which is a maximum security prison in Maryland. And he is waiting for a gentleman whose name is Mr. Turner, who is being released possibly right now after 31 years in prison. So I'm going to see if Earl is here and can speak with us and just give us a little preview of that and perhaps something about voting as well. You're on, Earl.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I did 34 years, 7 months, and 27 days. I was released through commutation through Larry Hogan for serving my time in exemplary fashion and being like Mr. Jonas. I participated in a host of programs inside of the Division of Corrections. Early on, I knew voting was significant because my parents and my grandparents used to take me to those old Army Green voting booths inside of the elementary schools and gymnasiums. And I knew when I seen how these seniors in the communities came out just to go in, I didn't know who the people were, who they was voting for, but I knew that it was important. I didn't truly comprehend the importance of voting until approximately my third, maybe fourth year in my incarceration. Then I started to notice the individuals, the policymakers who controlled my life, controlled the laws that govern communities, society in general. Those were the individuals in my family and my grandparents were voting for, and the neighbors were voting for. But it did not, the magnitude of how important it was in 1995 when then Governor Glenn Denny in a power move or pseudo power move to assure the public that they would be safer. He implemented a policy that changed the course of thousands of individuals sentenced to life. He literally turned a life sentence, which was in itself a pretty harsh penalty, into an impossible sentence to serve. These individuals, and like I said, I'm not going to mention any other politics by name other than Glenn Denny, politicians by name, but I knew then that every vote matters. The individuals that we put into office have to be individuals that we put into office that represent the greater good for the people, not for specific purposes. I have made it my mission to be a part of everything positive since I was released 15 months ago. In a couple of minutes, we have this is a personal friend, a dear friend that I walked a many a prison yard with, and we both were juveniles when we went in. We both were 17 when we were convicted. He's been released after 30 plus years. It's an honor to be in this position to pick him up. Monday, he called me before he was released and said, please, I need your help. I was like, what's up? They releasing you now? He said, no. He said, I'm trying to fill out my voter's registration before I come home. I want to beat the deadline. And I was like, what? I said, hold on, let me jump on the phone because now I'm under the clock. I got a half hour because the phone call is only a half hour. I have a half hour to get everything he needs done. Get all his personal information and get it logged into the registration, the Board of Elections, so that I can do everything just right. And without further ado, man, listen, I got you. This is Kristen there. This is my friends. Remember I asked you to do the stuff about voting? I just shared with them how important it is for you to vote, how important it was for you to get your registration in. Come on, man, you can sit in the car and we can put this in your lap. I'll get the box. Go ahead, sit down, man.
Hello, Mr. Turner. Hi, this is
How you
Kristen.
doing?
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Earl. We're welcome home. As Mr. Young just mentioned, we're talking today about incarceration and voting rights, and you just happened to arrive right at the right moment. So if you want to say a word, and also if you don't, we totally understand as well.
Welcome home, big homie.
Man, take your time. I'm crying.
We'll give it.
You can cry with me.
It's all good. It's all good.
Whew.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna give Mr. Turner a moment, but this was unexpected, as I mentioned, but here we are, and we can come back to him. So and if at any point, Earl, if you all want to jump in, feel free, give me a wave. And I think, and by the way, I got so excited that I forgot to share a little more about Earl, who we've just met. But what I do want to just say is that Earl's doing really incredible work up in Baltimore as a youth mentor and running programs for young people in Baltimore City Public Schools. And I got to meet Earl this summer when we started our pilot film workshops up in Baltimore with the Maryland Justice Project. And we have also with us today the executive director of the Maryland Justice Project, Monica Cooper, who, like Earl, has done really incredible work as an advocate for incarcerated folks in Maryland. And I'm going to just share a little bit of her bio, and I'll hand it over to you, Monica. Monica was raised in Sandtown in West Baltimore, and she served 10 years at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women. She emerged as a stronger advocate for the people, completing her degree at Baltimore City Community College. And she currently works for the city of Baltimore full-time, as well as running the Maryland Justice Project. She's also served as the executive director of Out for Justice. And in 2018, she ran for elected office and won. She was elected to the Baltimore District 40 Democratic Central Committee, where she currently serves as well. And she's an incredible advocate for voting rights, as well as many, many, many other things. And I am so grateful to call Monica a friend and partner and collaborator in this work. So do you want to share a bit of your story?
Well, yeah, let me get myself together, Mr. Turner. You got me all messed up.
We can go to Mr. Turner if you have something to say.
Yes, it's.
I'd like to thank y'all. My name is Alonzo Turner Bay. 31 years, 6 months, 15 days. I came to prison at 17 years old. The world is not what it was when I left. I see a lot going on. So, to me, voting is a part of being an American citizen. I believe in order to exercise my citizenship to its fullest, I must vote, become part of the political process. In order for some of the changes I want to see, I got to vote. I got to get involved with politics. I got to talk to local officials, because some people don't understand that a lot of changes where you live at, in order to affect them changes, they start on a local level, with the counties, the cities, your state senators, your state delegates, your governors. And from then you move on to federal level. So, it's 100 years since the women's suffrage movement. What better time than to get out and vote? A lot has happened. We need to make some changes. If women can go out there and fight 100 years to vote, me coming out of prison and voting, man, is mandatory.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for jumping in with us. I don't think you expected that, but we all, I think I'm gonna speak for our community that we're so glad that you're home, and I'll be back up in Baltimore soon, and I'll look forward to meeting you.
Well, I'm going to Charles County.
Okay.
But I'm gonna meet up with y'all.
We sure will.
But if y'all don't mind, I need to make a phone call.
Absolutely, you do.
So can I mute that?
Yes, Earl, take care of him. Let him make a phone call.
I gotta call my mother.
Yes.
I gotta call my mother, then I gotta call a few other people.
Yes. Thank you so
Welcome
much,
home, Mr. Turner.
Welcome home. All right. We're gonna go back to you, Monica. I know.
Wow. Okay. Where were we? Good grief. Okay. Well, first you guys have to excuse me because yes, I spent more than a decade incarcerated, and I know what that feels like to walk out that door and to breathe that first breath of relief to say to yourself, it is over, it is done. The weight of that is just like it's crazy. Nothing, I mean, you just can't, you gotta compose yourself, because you're gonna walk out there and you're just gonna cry and just be like, thank you, it's over. So now I'm getting my composure. I am Monica Cooper. I am the executive director of the Maryland Justice Project, a former incarcerated person. And yes, as you can see, I am also an elected official. And I got all my like voting stuff behind me. I love Baltimore because we vote, because I, just like Mr. Turner said, understands that your citizenship is deeply tied to your right to vote. And since African-American people have been here, we have fought to be full citizens. And there's always been this intention to keep former slaves from exercising the full citizenship and rights of other people in the country. And it's so sad that even today it still persists. But what happens is that officials get smarter and wiser in ways to disenfranchise folks. In the late 1800s, you know, you just were, I guess the Constitution said that you were considered 3/5 of the vote, and they only utilized the former slaves so that they could do gerrymandering and so that they could do all these, you know, political things. And then as time went on, you had women who said, you know what, we deserve the vote. There's not only white males who should be able to run everything, to own everything. Even a Caucasian woman, if her father gave her land, property, money, it belonged to her husband, because not even she had the full right of citizenship. So if you know the white woman didn't have full citizenship, you know the former slave didn't. So then we get up to 1965, the Voting Rights Act. And it took all that time for somebody to say, okay, well, we're going to let them vote. And now, most recently, we lost a giant in Justice Ginsburg, yeah, we lost a giant. And she said that they have gutted the 1965 Voting Rights Act. They had this thing called a pre-clearance, and a pre-clearance was so that places like Tennessee and Alabama, those southern states where those, you know, where they were known to participate in voter suppression, they had to prove that they weren't, you know, going back to that same old tricks with this pre-clearance. So now that the pre-clearance is gone, they have been, since a few years ago, they have been full on voter suppression. The history of voting is also tied to the penal system. I don't know if any of you guys saw this documentary. If you haven't, you got to check it out. It's called the 13th, and it talks about the 13th Amendment, and it talks about convict leasing, and it talks about all those things where as soon as you get in trouble, one of the first things they do is take your voting rights from you, because that is always the aim and always the objective. They do not want people, whether it be our immigrant brothers and sisters, whether it be whoever it is, they do not want people to have the ability to finally organize and come together and get rid of this white supremacist structure, because it is a structure and it's deeply embedded. And right now it's getting out of control because you know, those same old ways are not with younger people. Younger people in our colleges across the country and in, you know, just period, they don't see and think the same way that people used to think. So to them, it's like, yeah, why not everybody have equal rights? And to other people, it's like, no, they don't have equal rights and they shouldn't. So with all of this struggle and stuff with the voting, that is one of the reasons why I continue to push so hard. We recently, and man, we're tired. Earl, I don't know if he's still on the line, but I definitely want to give him a shout out and a personal thanks, because he ran this first leg of Maryland. I decided that the Maryland Justice Project would do our part by going to all 24 counties in the state of Maryland to each detention center and make sure that they received their voting registrations and that they're receiving their ballots. We're working with this Expand the Ballot, Expand the Vote Coalition with Common Cause Maryland, the Board of Elections, ACLU, Out for Justice, Life After Release, all of these other organizations. And we have really pushed the envelope. Right now in Baltimore County Detention Center, 759 people have been registered to vote. Now, this law has been on the books since the 1800s, but nobody has ensured that people in local detention centers, because you're in pretrial, you haven't been charged with anything. They can't take anything from you because you might get found not guilty. So we had drove across the state, and I said, oh yeah, we could do that in a day. I was like, oh God, what was I thinking? Maryland is not as big as Texas, but from Cumberland, Maryland, all the way down to the Eastern Shore, wow, it was daunting. It was a task, but we are fortunate to have foundations that support us, the Weisberg Foundation, Open Society, Institute, and it allows us to be able to have staff and people. That vehicle that we had came from funding, and that vehicle was able to travel across the state of Maryland and to make sure that thousands of people were able to vote. And to hear Mr. Turner say on his first day out that he's ready to register to vote, that goes to show how powerful the vote is, and that there is a awakening in the country to say that we are not going to let anybody disenfranchise a vote, because that is the one thing that's going to lead us to utopia. The right to vote and the right to have people, be considered full citizens and be able to make a choice of who they want to be their elected officials, even down to who they want to be their Supreme Court judges. Everything that goes on in this country will always lead back to the ballot. I don't care if it's a woman's right to choose. I don't care if it's gun control. To see our poor little babies get slaughtered in Sandy Hook is a shame. And people need to do something about it. Our elected officials need to do something about it. So all of these things that we are plagued with is going to begin at the polls. And we're going to take this stuff back, all of us. All of you guys watching, we're going to take this country back, and it's going to be for all of us and our children. And that's where it's going to start, right at the polls. Sound like I'm asking you guys to vote for me, but I'm not. I ran for elected office because I wanted to be an example to people who are formerly incarcerated. Not only should you exercise your right to vote, but you need to be civically active. If that means being councilmen, mayors, congressmen, just because you made a mistake in your past does not mean you do not have something to add to the fabric of this country. In fact, you may have even more to add with your own experiences so that the future generations can grow up in America that other people have seen. Martin Luther King saw a country that is different than the country we see now. That country is going to come in one day. That United States is going to happen, whether people like it or not. That United States of togetherness is going to happen. I'm confident. My ass might not be here to see it, but it's going to happen. All right, guys, I'm going to put myself on mute. I like to talk, so I'm going to push it up.
Yes, and but she has so many important things to say. I hate to even stop her. But I'm so grateful to you and for all the work that you're doing, and just that I get to be in community with you. And we are plotting, Monica and I are plotting some exciting, more exciting things coming to Maryland with the Maryland Justice Project and filmmaking. So, all right, this is a bit of a variety show, but we're going to show one more video, and this video is a music video, PSA, educational, star-studded extravaganza that Monica and I both got to be a part of, and are both Unchained Stories and Maryland Justice Project are partners with this project called I Have a Right. And you will get to see this video that we both had some small part, I would say, in creating. So I'm gonna share my screen one more time. We're gonna play this and then we'll take some questions. So have your questions ready while you're watching. All right, here we go.
The vote is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have in the democratic society. We must not allow the power of the vote to be neutralized. We must never go back.
1, 2, 3, 4. Voting rights we're fighting for. 5, 6, 7, 8. We cannot afford to wait. In 1865, justice was for some denied. The abolitionists stood bravely to denounce the crime. That we the people form the union and deserve to see. For every man and woman, black or white, equality. Frederick Douglass, 1865.
I am for the immediate, unconditional, and universal enfranchisement of the black man in every state in the Union. Without it, his liberty is a mockery.
Mary Church Terrell, 1912.
What could be more absurd than to have one group of human beings who are denied rights working to prevent another group from obtaining those same rights?
To be treated as a human being. Don't you take away my dignity. In a democracy to have a voice. I got a right to vote. In 1955, equality was still denied. So freedom marches took to fighting for our civil rights. Force the nation to confront his inhumanity. For every man and woman, black or white, let's say away. Chaos Rustin, 1957.
Dear Martin, we know that while it's necessary to say no to racial injustice, this must be followed by a positive program of action. The struggle for the right to vote, for economic uplift of the people.
Daniel Hayward, 1964.
1870. The 15th Amendment gave every man a chance to vote. And now it's 64, and they still trying to keep us away from the ballot. You say, honey, I'm behind you. Well, move. I don't want you back there. I want you to say, honey, I'm with you, and we'll go up this freedom road together.
To be treated as a human being. Don't you take away my dignity. In a democracy to have a voice. I got a right to vote. 2, 3, 4. Voting rights we're fighting for. 5, 6, 7, 8. We cannot afford to wait. Lyndon B. Johnson, 1965.
It was more than 100 years ago, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. A century has passed since equality was promised and the Negro was not yet equal. The time for justice has now come. No force can hold it back.
Ginsburg, 2013.
The sad irony of the court's decision today lies in its utter failure to grasp why the Voting Rights Act has proven effective. Throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm.
To be treated as a human being. Don't you take away my dignity. In a democracy to have a voice. Don't rock me. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. Disregard me. Get out of my way. Get out of my way.
All right, so that was I Have a Right. I think we dropped the link into the chat, but you might have caught a little glimpse of Monica and the Maryland Justice Project team, which we filmed in West Baltimore to be part of that project, as well as also the Women of the Wire, which is a DC-based nonprofit organization that's doing incredible work with returning citizens and formerly incarcerated women here. So we've put the link if you want to follow and share also that project. And now we've got about 10 minutes or so, and we'd love to see if there's any questions, thoughts, comments, if any of our panelists have additional thoughts, but we can either take questions in the chat box or you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. And as you're getting your questions organized, I just want to say one more time, thanks so much to TEDx FoggyBottom, and they're going to also give you a little more information. They have their main conference event happening tomorrow, so they'll give you some more information about that. So any questions, comments, thoughts? I know we have some other advocates and returning citizens and folks that are doing incredible work on the call. We also have, I just want to say, we have there's 3 interns that are working with Unchained Stories who are at BYU University, and we also have some GW students and the TEDx FoggyBottom team. So welcome students. I hope you all are voting. I know my crew is voting. So any questions, thoughts, comments?
I would like to, my name is Shannon. I'd like to thank all the speakers, the guests, and congratulate the brother for on his newfound freedom. And thanking Unchained Medium and you, Miss Kristen, for this providing this platform, letting us get our voices, out there, letting it be heard. I voted for the first time in my life, June the 2nd, 2019. I'm 44 years old. I did 25 years of incarceration, and it was one of the greatest feelings of my life. You know what I'm saying? It was one of the things that I appreciated the most since I've been home this 16 months. And in my new position at Free Minds, and I'm in a position to advocate for voting. So that's why I'm here. If I can help, I sure can use some help. But I think we trying to focus on getting out the vote for all our members. We want everyone to vote. We probably got hundreds of members, but probably like active like 100, and we trying to get everyone to vote. So that's our objective. That's my objective. I just love the platform. I'm thankful for just having this opportunity.
Thanks, Shannon. And as Shannon mentioned, he's working with the Free Minds Book Club here in DC, and they have members, incarcerated and formerly incarcerated folks from DC all over the country. And actually I have a question for Shannon and also Jonas, maybe just in terms of this new law in DC. If you're talking to folks on the inside, like what's the feeling? What's the word? Have folks gotten ballots? Are they, because I know a big challenge was actually figuring out how to get first, the application for registration out to all the DC folks who are incarcerated, particularly in the BOP. They brought them to them at the DC jail, which was amazing. But what have you heard? Are folks excited about the process? Are they engaging in the process? What's going on out there?
They are excited because it's a great opportunity, especially due to a lot of like pending legislation by the council that can directly affect a lot of the guys that's currently incarcerated. But due to the incompetence of the system and those who's working in the system, they still going through the same struggles of obtaining those ballots and getting those ballots out, because they got to go through a process of maybe the case manager, and they got to go through the warden. I mean, they got to probably find a way to simplify the process, and it's new to the BOP, and that's never good, especially during COVID. So I talked to a couple guys. I talk to guys regularly, and they you know they trying, but it's you know I'd be glad if 10% can succeed in actually getting their vote out due to the system and the incompetence of those that work within that system. That don't some people don't even they probably upset that they're allowing them to vote. So and they'll try to impede or hinder them at every corner. And Jonas probably can elaborate a little bit more because he just came out of that joint. So I know he understands.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, and Jonas, I think, tell us, but you filled out your registration while you were over at the DC jail once the law passed, and then now you've gotten your ballot. So tell us.
Yeah, over the jail, it was definitely it was like a mixed bag because on one hand, I know like those of us who, never had the right to begin with, you know what I'm saying, and may have had a desire at some point to want to be a part of the political process. It was extremely exciting for us. We was like, oh snap, like I can vote, like I can participate, like I can pick the mayor, I can, you know what I mean, or have a say in it, or the DC council, and particularly in YME, we were so well connected. Like we met Trayon White, and we actually met Mayor Muriel Bowser and other political figures, and had this direct link to them, and it made the process for us that much more real and that much more tangible. And I can say that for the mentees as well, because in our mentor position, we was always stressing to them, like, do y'all understand the gravity of what's going on here in this program? Like, we really hope that it sinks in, because like the rest of the jail didn't have that access, but I imagine that the rest of the jail had, like, because when they brung the registration forms, they brung them to us in little envelopes. They had our names on them, and they hand delivered them to us. And I imagine that went on in the rest of the jail as well. So they made kind of like a big show of it, if you will. You know what I mean? So that part was big, but it's like a mixed bag, because you can tell some of the like officers, they ain't really feeling it, and it's after it sunk in for us, like what was going on, it was a big deal for us in particular in YME. Definitely.
Thank you. I'll just say one thing, which is a little preview too of what is coming from Unchained Stories. And just to, Jonas mentioned YME, which is the Young Men Emerging Unit inside the DC Department of Corrections. And it started sort of as a pilot, but now it's fully entrenched there, and it's really incredible. It's a community where there are young men ages 18 to 25 who are incarcerated, and older mentors who are lifers like Jonas was, and others who are really helping to run the program and kind of design and vision that program. And they speak about it as a community, and there really are it's really a different feel. It's unlike any incarceration setting that I've been in, and I know a lot of the guys who have come from there. It's unlike any incarceration setting that they've been in as well. And one of the things that we have going on right now, I mentioned our course inside the DC Department of Corrections, and we have a sort of an advanced storytelling team, which is based in YME, and they are currently working on recording for a new podcast that is going to be coming from inside the DC jail. And we don't know all the details yet about exactly when it might be able to be, that material might be able to be released publicly, but know that they are working on a podcast episode about the experience of voting from inside the DC jail right now. So, and I'm sort of remote producing with them and Unchained Stories. And so we're pretty excited about that. I want to just check one more time to see if anybody has questions in the audience here, and really not thinking about audience, but conversation in the community. And also a question that I know a lot of people always have and often ask, so this might be your question, which is, how can I get involved? What can I do? And I actually want to ask Monica if you have anything to share just in terms of what folks can do to get involved with the advocacy in Maryland and, with Unchained, with Maryland Justice Project, as well as Unchained Stories. So.
Okay. Yes. Well, one of the things that we do is we work on legislative actions, and this coming session is going to be challenging because we have to do everything virtually. We would normally go to the State House in Annapolis, and we would go to take families and friends and people and loved ones who have family that's incarcerated. And we would kind of train them on the process and get them prepared to go and meet with a senator or a delegate. So now we have to kind of figure out how we're going to shift that stuff to do virtual stuff. But we always need people who are willing to show up, because policies and laws usually change when the lawmakers see a whole bunch of people for some reason. And for them, 10 people, that's a lot. You take 10 people to their house, they'll be like, damn, 10 people, man, we better do something. Because they are so used to people. We go to the polls and we'll vote for the president and we do nothing afterwards. We'll go to the polls and we'll vote for a governor or a mayor, and we do not follow up with the things that we need. You had some folks in Michigan that went to the State House with guns. I was like, oh Lord, what are they going to take over the State House? But you have groups of people who have long understood that voting is not just something that happens on one day. Voting is just the first step into forcing change. That's the first step. You have to constantly follow up with policy. You have to constantly show up. You have to constantly take your volunteers to those people and say, hey, remember you said you were going to do this. Remember, this is our acts. This is our demand. We demand that you stop allowing people to die from cancers and COVID inside of prisons when they're 84 years old. What good does it do the taxpayer to hold an 84-year-old person who is brain dead, dying of cancer, that could do absolutely no harm to the general public? The only thing it does is harms our tax-paying dollars. They would rather pay all of this money in taxes to house this one person when it just makes more sense to just let them go, send them to hospice like that, right? So there's some issues and some things that go on that we just can't show up and vote at the ballot. So we could always use volunteers that's willing to make phone calls, that's willing to be pen pals, that's willing to write people, because these folks have been there for quite a long time. And some of their family members have died. I met a guy named Mr. Ford. He was in there for 84 years. His name was Charlie Ford. I went and we played checkers together. And he asked me to give him $5 because he wanted to buy a coat from the guy down the hall. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, Mr. Ford, what you need $5 for? He said, because this guy going to sell me this jacket. I said, oh Lord. But when this guy got arrested, they didn't even have fences around. They didn't have any of that. They used to call him Mr. Baseball because they used to take the guys and have them play baseball against other institutions. So having Mr. Ford there, 84 years or whatever, I think it was actually 64, it might have been 64. But whatever it was a long time. And I'm like, come on, man. Anyway, we could always use, and younger people like you guys on y'all, man, y'all know how to do some stuff. Y'all know about Instagram. Y'all
oh my gosh, Monica, this crew, they are helping me with the Instagram.
They know a lot of stuff. So yeah, we could use that youth. They know how to get stuff started. You know, they got little Gretchen. She's a little kid from Sweden or Switzerland, and she's stirring up the whole world.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Monica, you got a shout out. We had Lenny from the Weisberg. I think it's Lenny from the Weisberg Foundation.
Oh yeah.
She had to jump off, but she shouted out the incredible work that you all are doing around civility. Maryland.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
if you don't mind, you could put, I think we put the website, but if you want to put your email, if folks want to contact you about getting involved in
Oh, good.
advocacy,
I'll add my email.
in the chat. So I just want to thank you all for joining us. And I don't know, I mean, we can do a little applause because this crew is just so great. I was telling the TEDx team how amazing they were. And I'm so happy that you all got to hear from this crew, plus our very special guest. One more time for Mr. Turner, welcome home. We're so happy to have you on here. And as I mentioned, we dropped all the Unchained Stories info into the chat. So if you want to follow us on social media, you can sign up for our newsletter at our website. Jonas and I and our team are working on a short film project that is going to feature some of his poetry and his work. And we also had the link in the chat. If you want to buy Jonas's book, it is on the Amazon. You can buy your own copy. Yeah, we are just really happy to have this conversation. Do you want to share the TEDx event info?
Yeah, so I just really want to thank everyone, the Unchained Stories team and all our speakers. This was really amazing and a great conversation. And thank you everyone who joined. Make sure to follow Unchained Stories on social media and get your tickets for TEDx FoggyBottom if you haven't already. It's tomorrow. It's going to be great. I'll put the website in the chat. And you can follow us on social media as well. Oh wait, I sent it to you. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to put my email as well if anyone wants to get in touch. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. So